Pain is not an enemy. It is not a mistake. It is not a punishment. Pain is a messenger. It comes uninvited. It arrives without asking permission. But it always brings with it a truth that cannot be ignored. To recognize the pain without denial means to accept the presence of what hurts, to face what disturbs the peace within, and to stop building walls of distraction in order to escape it. Most people, when pain arises, immediately move towards suppression or avoidance. They numb themselves with entertainment, with noise, with endless activity. But when avoidance becomes the pattern, the root of pain remains untouched. It grows silently, it embeds itself deeper, and eventually it influences every thought and action. Recognition is the first act of courage, the moment when you turn toward the discomfort and say, "I see you." Denial of pain is a subtle form of resistance. Resistance is energy spent in the wrong direction. Instead of flowing with the reality of the moment, denial locks the body, the mind, and the breath in a fight against what already exists. This is why denial exhausts the spirit. One may keep running, one may keep smiling on the outside, but inside there is a storm that has not been acknowledged. Pain does not diminish because it is ignored. On the contrary, it grows stronger in the shadows. To recognize pain means to step into the storm consciously, without wishing it away, without pretending it does not exist. It is to let the truth of the experience be felt fully, without editing, without covering it with layers of false positivity. Recognition does not mean indulgence. It does not mean identifying with pain and making it your identity. To recognize is to witness. The witness sees clearly without judgment. When you stand as the witness, you are not drowning in suffering, nor are you fleeing from it. You are present. Pain becomes an object in your awareness, not the definition of who you are. In this state of recognition, the intensity of suffering shifts. It is still there, but it no longer dictates every breath, every decision, every thought. You begin to sense space around it. And in that space, strength quietly grows. Many people confuse recognition with weakness. They believe that if they allow themselves to feel pain, they will collapse under its weight. Yet the truth is the opposite. Avoidance weakens, recognition strengthens. The person who denies pain is fragile because they are constantly guarding against the truth. The person who recognizes pain is unshakable because they have nothing left to hide from themselves. When you can face your own suffering without denial, the world outside loses its power to control you. No opinion, no rejection, no failure can hurt you more than what you have already learned to face within. The body remembers pain. It carries it in tightened muscles, in shallow breathing, in restless sleep. Denial pushes the body to carry even more until it becomes heavy with what was never released. Recognition allows the body to exhale. It gives permission for the tension to soften, for the burden to be seen and therefore set down. The act of recognition is healing in itself, because healing begins not with escape but with truth. Only what is seen can be understood, and only what is understood can be transformed. There is also a silence that arises when pain is recognized fully. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of acceptance. No struggle, no resistance, no noise of running away. This silence is powerful because it allows clarity. In clarity, the lessons hidden within the pain reveal themselves. Every painful experience carries knowledge about limits, about attachments, about expectations, about impermanence. But this knowledge cannot reach you if you deny the pain. It comes only when you stay still enough, present enough, to listen to what the pain has to teach. To recognize pain without denial is to respect reality. Life is not made only of comfort. It is made of both light and shadow, joy and sorrow, rising and falling. To wish for only one side is to live half a life. To recognize the whole spectrum is to step into the fullness of existence. This recognition brings humility because you understand that you are not separate from suffering. Every being you meet has carried their share of pain, and through your own recognition, compassion naturally awakens. The heart becomes softer, the judgment less harsh, the understanding deeper. Recognition is not a single moment, but an ongoing practice. Pain arises in many forms, physical, emotional, mental. Sometimes it comes suddenly, like a sharp strike. Other times it lingers quietly, a dull ache in the background of life. In each case, the choice remains to deny or to recognize. Denial delays growth. Recognition invites transformation. Transformation does not erase the pain, but it changes the relationship with it. The moment you stop resisting, the suffering loses its grip. The pain may still be present, but it is no longer the master. You are no longer enslaved by it. The strength of a person is not measured by how much they can avoid, but by how much they can face. Recognition is the training ground of inner strength. The more you recognize, the more resilient you become. Life will continue to bring challenges, but with each recognition, the ability to remain steady grows. Instead of collapsing, you stand. Instead of denying, you face. Instead of fleeing, you breathe through it. And in that steady presence, the pain transforms into wisdom, into depth, into clarity. Recognition is the doorway to this inner freedom, but it opens only when denial is left behind. There is a deep misunderstanding in how many people live their daily lives. Most believe that emotions and reactions are bound together, that when one feels something strong, the only possible outcome is an immediate response. Anger rises and words are spoken. Fear arrives and actions of avoidance appear. Excitement comes and rash decisions are taken without clarity. Yet the truth is different. Emotion is not reaction. Emotion is energy that arises in the body and mind, while reaction is the choice made in response to that energy. To detach emotion from reaction is to recognize the space that exists between what is felt and what is done, and in that space lies strength, clarity, and true freedom of action. Every human being experiences the full spectrum of emotion: joy, sadness, rage, envy, love, disappointment, hope. All of these energies move through the system like waves. They are natural, they are human, and they are unavoidable. The error arises when one assumes that emotion must dictate behavior. But emotion is only a signal, not an order. When one feels anger, the body becomes tense, the breath shortens, the heart races. These are signs of energy rising. They do not compel a harsh word or violent act. They are simply the body's language, alerting the mind to what is being experienced. When the individual confuses the signal with an instruction, reaction follows without awareness, and then regret often arrives. To detach emotion from reaction requires cultivating inner silence. When an emotion appears, instead of immediately allowing it to control behavior, one observes it. Imagine anger arriving like a fire. If immediately one throws fuel on it by reacting, it spreads and consumes. But if one simply notices the flame, sees its color, feels its heat, but does not feed it, the fire burns differently. It may still be present, but its destruction is prevented. This is the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is unconscious, immediate, and driven by the surge of emotion. Response is conscious, measured, and comes from awareness. Training in this detachment is not about suppressing emotions. Suppression is simply another form of reaction, only turned inward. The body holds the tension, the mind resists, and the energy is locked within. Over time, suppressed emotions become heaviness, stress, and illness. Detachment is not suppression, it is recognition. When sadness arrives, the individual notices it fully. Its weight in the chest, its depth in the breath, the slowness it brings to movement. But instead of drowning in it, instead of immediately collapsing or withdrawing, the observer stands firm. They see sadness not as the self, but as a visitor. In this way, sadness is honored, felt, and yet not allowed to dominate action. The power of detaching emotion from reaction is most evident in conflict. Imagine being insulted. Words are spoken to provoke, to wound, to draw you into a battle. The immediate emotion is hurt or anger. If reaction follows instantly, the cycle of conflict begins, each person feeding the other's fire. But if detachment is present, the emotion is acknowledged silently, and no impulsive response is made. The silence itself becomes power. The absence of reaction disarms the conflict. This does not mean passivity, but clarity. Instead of striking back blindly, one chooses a response rooted in wisdom. Sometimes it is walking away. Sometimes it is speaking calmly. Sometimes it is simply smiling. Detachment from reaction also deepens self-understanding. When emotions are observed instead of acted upon, one learns their patterns. You begin to see which situations trigger anger, which environments awaken anxiety, which people draw out joy or insecurity. This knowledge becomes a map of the inner world. Without detachment, one is tossed around like a leaf in the wind, always reacting without awareness. With detachment, one becomes the watcher of the wind, understanding its direction and choosing how to move with it. Consider how water behaves when it encounters obstacles. A river does not rage against the rock. It flows around it, smooth and calm, yet with immense power. Human life, too, can be like this when emotions do not control reaction. The obstacle appears, the emotion rises, but the reaction is chosen wisely, like water choosing its path. This is not weakness, but strength. It is the mastery of self. To cultivate this ability requires discipline. The first step is awareness of the breath. Every emotion changes the rhythm of breathing. By noticing this, one creates a pause. Anger shortens the breath. Fear quickens it. Calm deepens it. When emotion arises, if one takes just a single conscious breath before reacting, the link between emotion and action loosens. That single breath is the doorway to freedom. It reminds the mind that reaction is not inevitable. The second step is practice in stillness. Each day, taking moments of silence, observing the flow of thoughts and emotions without engaging, strengthens the ability to detach. Just as muscles grow through training, the mind grows through disciplined observation. At first, emotions seem overwhelming, but over time, one learns they are like waves on the surface of the ocean. Beneath them is stillness, and from that stillness, reactions need not be automatic. Finally, there is the recognition of choice. No one can prevent emotions from arising, but everyone has the power to choose their response. This realization itself transforms life. The individual is no longer a prisoner of impulses. They become a creator of their actions, not a victim of feelings. This is the essence of detaching emotion from reaction. The discovery that freedom exists not in controlling the outer world, but in mastering the inner space between what is felt and what is done. To understand the source means to journey beyond the surface of appearances and into the foundation from which all things arise. Most people spend their lives caught in the manifestations, the results, the shadows of the source. They look at the branches, but never trace them back to the root. They marvel at the waves, but never dive into the ocean that carries them. To understand the source is to shift the mind from chasing outcomes to seeking the origin. It is not simply a matter of intellectual understanding, but of direct experience, because the source cannot be fully captured by words. It is the silent origin, the quiet foundation, the still ground from which motion springs. When we live without awareness of the source, we live scattered. We move from one thing to another, searching for satisfaction, chasing success, grasping at recognition, yet none of these bring lasting fulfillment. The reason is simple: they are not the source. They are reflections. To drink from reflections is never to quench the thirst. Only when one finds the spring itself can the thirst be dissolved. The source is not hidden, yet it is overlooked. It is like the space in which everything happens, so obvious that it becomes invisible. But once you pause and shift attention, once you look not only at the things but also at the space around them, you begin to sense the underlying presence. Understanding the source is not about adding more to your mind. It is about removing what obstructs. Too much noise, too many layers of conditioning, too many attachments cloud the vision. Imagine a muddy stream. When you try to see into it, the mud makes the water opaque. If you keep stirring it, the mud never settles. But if you remain still, if you let time and silence work, the water clears and the bottom becomes visible. In the same way, when you stop stirring the mind, when you stop constantly reaching outward, the clarity arises naturally, and you begin to perceive the source from which your thoughts and emotions arise. The source is not far, it is closer than your breath. Every breath you take, every beat of your heart, every flicker of awareness arises from it. Yet the mind wants to complicate, to run outward, to seek in places where the source will never be found. Some search in possessions, some in relationships, some in achievements, but all of these are changing, impermanent. To base your life on the impermanent is to build on shifting sand. To understand the source is to find the ground beneath the sand, the foundation that does not move even as waves crash upon it. To return to the source is to return to simplicity. The source is not decorated, not complicated, not adorned with noise. It is quiet, unshaken, pure. When you align yourself with it, you feel a deep sense of peace that is not dependent on conditions. The world may be in chaos, yet within you there remains a stillness that cannot be touched. This is the strength of understanding, not the strength of control, but the strength of alignment. The river does not fight against its source, it flows naturally because of it. The branches of a tree do not struggle to receive nourishment, they are effortlessly sustained because they remain connected to the root. When you understand the source, you stop resisting and allow life to flow with its natural current. The practice of turning toward the source requires attention and discipline. It is easy to be distracted by the noise of the world, to be drawn outward by endless desires, to mistake reflections for reality. But every time you return to silence, Every time you pause to breathe and observe without judgment, you are stepping closer to the source. The source is not somewhere else. It does not need to be chased or achieved. It is always here, like the sky behind the clouds. Remove the clouds of distraction, and the vastness of the sky reveals itself. Understanding the source also means recognizing that everything you see around you has arisen from it. The joy, the sorrow, the birth, the decay, all are expressions of the same ground. To deny the source is to be caught in division, thinking that life is fragmented and separate. To realize the source is to see unity, to perceive that all things are interconnected, all threads woven into the same fabric. When this vision dawns, compassion naturally grows because harming another is seen as harming oneself. Helping another is seen as strengthening the whole. This shift does not come from moral instruction but from clarity of perception. When the source is forgotten, life becomes heavy. You try to carry everything on your shoulders. You try to control outcomes. You try to resist change. But when the source is understood, the weight lifts. You realize that you are not the separate door, but a participant in a greater unfolding. You still act, you still move through life, but your actions are infused with ease rather than tension, with presence rather than grasping. In every tradition, in every philosophy, the teaching points back to the same truth. Return to the source, whether it is called silence, emptiness, spirit, Tao, or simply awareness, the message remains. Do not get lost in the branches. Do not be hypnotized by the waves. Look deeper. Trace it back. Understand not only what is seen, but that from which the seeing arises. Only then will you truly know what it means to be at home, to be whole, to be in harmony with the essence of life. In life, there are countless forces, both seen and unseen, that constantly pull at our attention, our focus, and our inner balance. Every day, whether we are aware of it or not, we are spending energy. Not just physical energy that moves the body, but mental energy that fuels our thoughts, emotional energy that colors our feelings, and spiritual energy that connects us to something greater than ourselves. This energy is the essence of who we are, and yet many people give it away too easily. They allow distractions, negativity, and outside influences to drain them, leaving them exhausted and disconnected from their true self. To live with clarity, strength, and purpose, one must learn to protect inner energy. Protecting your energy does not mean isolating yourself from the world. It means becoming aware of what depletes you and what nourishes you. It means noticing the conversations, the environments, and even the thoughts that consume your vitality. A simple encounter with negativity can take hours, sometimes even days, to recover from if you do not know how to shield yourself. On the other hand, surrounding yourself with uplifting energy, whether it comes from nature, from discipline, or from intentional practices, can replenish you in ways that no material possession ever could. The first step in protecting inner energy is awareness. Most people are so entangled in noise and activity that they do not even recognize when their energy has been taken from them. They mistake exhaustion for normal life. They believe constant stress and distraction are simply part of the modern condition. But once awareness is cultivated, you begin to feel the difference between environments that drain you and those that empower you. You begin to notice how certain people leave you feeling empty while others ignite inspiration within you. This awareness is the foundation of energy protection. Once you recognize the leaks in your energy field, the next step is discipline. Protecting energy requires boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are lines of clarity that define what you will allow into your space. Saying no to unnecessary obligations, refusing to entertain gossip, choosing silence over meaningless chatter. These are all ways of conserving energy. Every time you choose what not to engage with, you are protecting your inner reserves for what truly matters. Discipline in this sense is not about restriction, but about preservation. Another essential aspect of protecting inner energy is the practice of inner stillness. In stillness, the energy that was scattered begins to gather again. Imagine a lake disturbed by wind, rippling endlessly. When the wind stops, the surface becomes calm, and the water reflects the sky above. Your energy works in the same way. When the mind is scattered by external demands, your energy leaks away in all directions. But in silence, in meditation, in deep breathing, that energy collects again, and with it comes clarity, strength, and resilience. It is also important to remember that energy is influenced by what you consume. This does not only refer to food and drink, although they do play a role. What you read, what you watch, the words you hear, the music you absorb, all of these enter your mind and shape your energy. Feeding yourself with negativity, with constant stimulation, or with empty distractions drains your reserves just as much as unhealthy food does. Protecting your energy means being selective with what you allow to enter, knowing that everything leaves an imprint on your inner state. Relationships are one of the greatest sources of energy exchange. Every interaction you have either lifts your energy or lowers it. Being around those who constantly complain, criticize, or manipulate is like carrying a heavy stone on your back. Over time, it breaks you down. But being around those who inspire, encourage, and live with authenticity fills you with vitality. Protecting your energy sometimes means walking away from relationships that no longer serve your growth. This is not an act of cruelty, but of self-preservation. Just as you would not continue to drink poisoned water, you should not continue to expose yourself to toxic energy. Protecting your inner energy also requires alignment between your thoughts, words, and actions. When you live in contradiction, thinking one thing, saying another, and doing something entirely different, you create inner conflict, and conflict drains energy. Integrity restores it. To live in alignment is to live in truth, and truth does not waste energy. It channels it directly into meaningful action. Physical practices are another way of strengthening your energy field. Movement, breathing exercises, martial arts, yoga, and similar disciplines do not only strengthen the body, they build an inner reservoir of energy. When you cultivate the body, you protect the spirit within it. The body becomes a vessel strong enough to hold and direct energy rather than letting it spill away through fatigue or imbalance. The natural world also has a way of restoring what has been lost. Time in nature recalibrates the energy system. The rhythm of the wind, the stillness of the trees, the flow of water, all of these work in harmony, and when you immerse yourself in them, your own energy aligns with that harmony. Protecting your energy sometimes means stepping away from the artificial chaos of modern life and returning to the simplicity of nature's design. Finally, protecting inner energy means recognizing that not everything deserves your response. Silence is often the strongest shield. When provoked, when criticized, when misunderstood, the instinct is to fight back, to explain, to prove. But each reaction is an expenditure of energy. When you learn to let go of unnecessary battles, you conserve your strength for what truly requires it. Not every stone thrown at you must be picked up. Not every challenge deserves your attention. Energy is too precious to waste on noise that does not matter. Hurt is a universal experience, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from. At some point in life you encounter pain. Sometimes it comes from the outside world. Words that cut, losses that feel unbearable, disappointments that arrive unexpectedly. Other times it comes from within. Self-doubt, guilt, regret, the quiet ache of unspoken fears. Hurt is like a weight that rests in the heart, heavy enough to slow down even the strongest spirit. Yet within that weight lies hidden potential, the raw material for transformation. Hurt, when understood and worked with, does not only wound, it also teaches, refines, and prepares you for a greater version of yourself. Strength does not come from avoiding pain, but from transforming it, from using the very thing that once weakened you as fuel for your resilience. Every scar tells a story, but not every story must remain one of suffering. When we hold hurt without awareness, it festers. It repeats itself in patterns, in relationships, in choices. But when we step back and see hurt as a teacher, it begins to shift. The very pain that once seemed unbearable starts to reveal its message. Here lies your opportunity to grow. Pain sharpens awareness. It forces you to look inward, to evaluate what is broken, and to search for what can be rebuilt stronger. What feels like destruction in one moment is often the foundation of resilience in another. The first step in transforming hurt into strength is acceptance. To accept is not to approve of what happened, nor to say it was right or fair. Acceptance means to acknowledge that the hurt exists, to stop running from it, and to allow yourself to face it fully. Many avoid this step by burying hurt under distractions, numbing it with noise or denying its presence. Yet what is denied only grows in silence. Acceptance is like opening the door to a hidden room. What was concealed in darkness becomes visible, and once visible, it can be understood and healed. From acceptance flows understanding. Every hurt carries an origin. It may come from betrayal, from unmet expectations, from a broken bond, from words spoken carelessly. To understand is to see that hurt is not random. It arises from attachment, from meaning, from caring deeply. You hurt because you valued something or someone. You hurt because you gave a part of yourself. And in this realization lies a subtle strength. The ability to feel deeply is not weakness, but humanity. To care is to risk being hurt, but it is also the same capacity that allows you to experience love, joy, and connection. Once you understand your hurt, you begin to notice the energy it carries. Hurt is energy, intense, consuming, sometimes destructive. Left uncontrolled, it burns inward, turning into bitterness, anger, or despair. But energy can be redirected. The fire of hurt can be channeled into growth, determination, and discipline. History is full of examples where people turn their deepest wounds into their greatest strengths. Some built legacies from loss, others created art from sorrow, and many found wisdom through suffering. The transformation happens not because the hurt vanished, but because they decided to mold it into something new. Strength is born when hurt is no longer allowed to define you. It does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean pretending it never happened. Strength means remembering without being consumed. It means carrying the scar, but not letting it weigh you down. It means turning what was once a reason to break into a reason to rise. This shift is subtle but powerful. Hurt stops being the center of your story, and instead your response to it becomes the defining chapter. To transform hurt into strength requires patience. The process is not instant, nor is it smooth. Some days, the wound feels fresh again. Some days, memories reopen what was healing. Yet even in these moments, strength is being formed quietly, like a seed beneath the soil. Every time you choose to keep moving forward despite the pain, you strengthen your resilience. Every time you choose understanding instead of resentment, you deepen your wisdom. Every time you choose growth instead of withdrawal, you expand your spirit. Transformation also requires release. Holding on to hurt tightly keeps you bound to the past. It is like carrying a heavy stone everywhere you go, convincing yourself you need it to survive. But when you release the grip, you free yourself. Release does not erase the past. It frees your energy from being trapped in it. It allows you to redirect your focus, to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. And in that space of release, strength emerges naturally. Hurt transformed into strength changes not only you but also how you affect the world around you. A person who has walked through suffering and risen stronger carries a quiet power. They embody resilience that others can feel. They radiate a presence that says, I have endured, and I continue. This presence becomes a light for others still struggling in their pain. Transformation spreads. Your strength becomes a reminder that hurt does not have to be the end, that it can be reshaped into something meaningful. Strength born from hurt is deeper than ordinary strength. It is not loud, not always visible on the surface. It is the kind of strength that allows you to endure storms without collapsing, to bend without breaking, to rise after falling. It is the strength of knowing that you have faced your darkest moments and found the courage to continue. It is the strength of wisdom, compassion, and clarity, the kind that can only be forged in the fire of pain. Human beings have a tendency to hold on. We cling to possessions, people, ideas, identities, and experiences because they give us a sense of security. Attachment becomes a familiar home where the mind feels safe, even if that home is filled with discomfort. Yet in this clinging lies the source of much suffering. To choose liberation over attachment is not to reject life, but to meet life with open hands instead of closed fists. It is to recognize that freedom does not come from holding tightly, but from releasing the grip and allowing things to flow as they naturally will. Attachment can be subtle, woven into the smallest corners of daily existence. One can be attached to a routine, a personal story, an old belief that no longer serves, or an image of how others perceive them. This attachment creates tension because reality is always shifting. Change is the nature of all things, but attachment resists it. When what we hold on to begins to move, we experience pain, not because change is cruel, but because we have chained ourselves to something impermanent. Choosing liberation means aligning with the truth of impermanence and walking alongside it rather than fighting against it. Liberation is not abandonment. It does not mean becoming indifferent or detached in a cold sense. Liberation is the ability to engage fully with life while not being bound by it. To love deeply without trying to possess. To work with dedication without being enslaved by outcomes. To walk with others without chaining them to our expectations. This type of freedom allows one to breathe without fear, to act without clinging, to love without condition. The practice of choosing liberation over attachment begins in awareness. The mind must be trained to see where it has created invisible strings. Every moment of resistance, every feeling of frustration or anxiety, often points towards something the mind refuses to release. By observing these moments, one begins to uncover the attachments shaping daily life. Liberation comes not by forcefully cutting them away, but by understanding their nature and loosening their grip with clarity. Attachment often disguises itself as care. One says, "I worry because I love," or "I hold on because it matters." But love and worry are not the same. Worry constricts while love liberates. True care allows space for growth and movement, whereas attachment binds and controls. By confusing the two, we imprison both ourselves and others. Liberation reveals the difference. It shows that to love is to allow, to trust, and to release control over what was never ours to keep. The mind fears liberation because it equates freedom with loss. It imagines that letting go means emptiness, that without attachments life will be hollow. Yet the opposite is true. When one is free from clinging, life becomes fuller because it is no longer filtered through constant resistance. Experiences are met as they are without the heavy burden of expectation. Joy is no longer dependent on conditions being fixed in place. It flows naturally because nothing is being forced to remain as it was. Attachment ties energy into knots. It binds thought, emotion, and action into cycles of repetition. Liberation, on the other hand, allows energy to move fluidly. When we release the need to control, energy is freed from stagnation and transforms into creativity, clarity, and peace. This is why choosing liberation over attachment is not only a mental shift, but also a transformation of one's inner vitality. The freer the mind, the lighter the spirit, and the more powerful the energy becomes. One of the greatest illusions of attachment is that it promises stability. We believe that if we hold tightly enough, things will stay. But nothing in life was ever meant to stay unchanged. Seasons shift, bodies age, relationships evolve, and circumstances transform. Stability does not come from holding still. It comes from adapting with grace. Choosing liberation over attachment means trusting in one's own ability to meet whatever comes rather than fearing what may go. The discipline of liberation requires courage. It is not always easy to release what feels safe, even if it limits growth. The familiar cage often feels more secure than the open sky, but cages, no matter how comfortable, restrict the spirit. To fly requires stepping beyond the bars, embracing uncertainty, and realizing that freedom carries its own form of safety. When the spirit is free, it finds strength not in holding on, but in being able to flow with life's continuous unfolding. In relationships, attachment often appears as dependence or control. We expect others to fulfill our needs, to behave according to our desires, to stay in forms that comfort us. But such expectations create friction because people are not possessions. Liberation in relationships means allowing others to be who they are, giving them the space to transform just as we do. This freedom nurtures connection instead of suffocating it. Paradoxically, when we release our grip, relationships often deepen because they are rooted in choice, not in chains. To choose liberation over attachment is to shift from fear to trust. Fear clings, afraid of change, afraid of loss, afraid of emptiness. Trust releases, knowing that life provides what is needed at the right moment. Trust understands that endings create beginnings, that release opens doors, and that freedom carries within it the seed of transformation. Liberation is not passive. It is an active choice to live fully in the present, without trying to freeze it in place. The journey of liberation is lifelong. Attachments will always arise because the human heart naturally connects, desires, and identifies. But each attachment is also an opportunity, a reminder to practice awareness, to loosen the grip, and to return once again to freedom. Over time, the choice of liberation becomes more natural, and life begins to feel lighter, more expansive, more aligned with the flow of existence.